We're going to talk about charts and graphics today. Give you a short lecture, then we're going to do some stuff about that. So, a couple of things you want to do with charts and graphics. One is communication. So, if you're in front of a client and wanted to tell them you should do X or Y, do you want to show them a block of numbers, or do you want to show them a nice chart with a line, showing a trend or something like that? What's easier to communicate? Something that's graphic or just a lot of figures? So the idea is, if you have something you want to communicate, if you already have a conclusion, you already have an idea you want to get across, a great way of doing that is to provide a chart or graphic, especially since whoever you're talking to usually isn't as familiar with the material as you are, and they need it simplified as much as possible. So one thing you're doing is communicating what you already know to people, making it simple, making it straightforward, making it compelling, and people like pictures more than like letters and numbers. So the other is to analyze. What you do is you go into the data. You don't know what's going on with this group. Let's say, I want to find out something about this class or something like that. How much do you work for pay and things like that? How many classes do you have? I want to see, what you all have on your plate or something like that. What I could do is go in there and ask you some questions, and I can look at a chart or graphic and see what's going on with that group. So I can maybe see over the years there's been an increase in the number of hours that students are working, and that gives me insight. I can look into it, and I'm not sure what I'm going to find, but if I do a chart or graphic, I can see if there's something interesting going on. So you can use it either for communication or analysis. Okay, so let's look at a basic chart. This is called a correlation. It's a very basic thing in academia. If you get nothing out of your next 4 years, you should at least know what that term means. And every time you're going to hear that term not only in academia, but and anything you read, that is supported by data, public discussion, a newspaper article. If they use that term, this is what it means. What a correlation means is that as you increase or decrease in one value or factor, you're increasing or decreasing in another. In other words, there's a relationship. Change in one leads to change in the other. In this case, this is weight in kilograms and how much you're running per week, right? So if you have a relationship, you're going to see an increase in this leads to an increase or decrease in that, or vice versa. Okay? And this is actually no relationship. That is a negative relationship, that's a positive relationship. As you increase in this, you decrease there. As you increase here, you're increasing here. Okay? So that is a correlation, that's a correlation, that is not a correlation. Does there seem to be a correlation here? Yep. You'll notice the blank areas. If it's completely random, there wouldn't be, big blank areas. So it seems to be that these two things are related, and they usually draw a line, to show the mathematical relationship between the two. But these dots are coming; they're sort of, near this line here. So there seems to be a pattern. As you increase as you increase in running, let's say, you're decreasing in weight. Now, what are these dots? Does anyone know?
Plotting data.
Okay, what's the data though? Is it cars, cats, gerbils?
Pounds, kilometers.
No, that's a factor. That's a factor. Those are two aspects of the data. But each one of these is a piece of data. What are we tracking? It's not a trick question. What are we tracking? Who has weight and who runs or not? People. Okay, so each one of that's Bill, that's George, that's Sam. Okay, so that's basically this person here runs that much, and that's how much they weigh. Okay, and so what does this tell you? If you're going to tell your niece or nephew something about, you know, what information could this convey?
Running is a good way to lose weight.
Okay, there's definitely association. You don't know if there's a causal effect, but you know that the two things tend to go together. It's called correlation. Here is a bar chart. It's a comparison chart. So what is this? If you are going to if you're going to do some marketing for a political campaign, you want to find out where you're going to put your money to have the biggest bang for the buck. Where do you need to put your money in to convince people to support Medicare? So in other words, you're looking for, okay, where do we want to focus our money on in terms of marketing here? What would you say? Where is the greatest need in terms of rural, urban, and suburban? Where do we need to put in more money to convince people? Well, urban is already convinced of Medicare, right? For all. Right. So basically, urban is most people are already in for it. The rural people are the ones that, okay? So that's, you know, a very common example of what you would do. Here we go. Here's some trends. These are basically the same data. You have an area chart here. The top over here is the top 1%. That's the top next 9%. This is the next 40%. That is the bottom 50%. This is sort of the same thing. You are, starting with 1989, you're tracking the top 1%, next 9%, and bottom 90%. Okay, so what's your impression? What are you going to tell your niece or nephew? What's going on here? Over time, what's happening? What do you think? Can't figure it out? Did anyone help them? Go.
The wealthy are getting wealthier.
Wealthier. So does anyone here care? Does that matter to you?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I feel like more people should have opportunities to, you know, build wealth, but it seems like that's not the trend at the moment.
Okay. So it's unfair. Some people seem to have, you know, are getting more than others. But in more concrete terms, what does that mean for your life? Are you happy or sad about this trend? Does it affect you? How?
Because we as college students, me at least, I'm definitely not wealthy.
Okay. Not wealthy, but you're going to be in college, you're going to graduate, and you're going to make some money. Are you going to be in the top 10%? What do you think their income is?
Millions.
Okay, millions. You're right. The top 1% is near millions. So if you're in the top 10%, what do you think the income would have to be?
Like monthly or
Yearly. So just think about that. And so this is actually the average wages of top earners. So the top 10%, you have to make $168,000 to crack the top 10%. How many people here think you're going to make that in your career? One? That's it? Okay, let's look at some hard data. Let's find out. Here's the starting salary for business marketing and in Montclair State University, $71,000. Okay, so that's your starting salary. If you have a master's degree, it's $85,000. You know, as you can see, that's nowhere near the 168. So, happy or sad about this trend? It's going to be, the world's going to get a little harder, huh? And so, you know, is it good to be aware of that or not? Is that useful at all? So, you know, I'm actually a chart guy. I like looking at charts all the time. So that's actually what we're going to do. If you go to the front page of Canvas, there is a link to Google Sheets for this class today, and this is what you're going to find. And very simply, what I want you to do is just go find the chart that you're interested in, copy it, paste it. Okay, you should see something like this. So the idea is you're going to advise someone that's about to retire. Now, if you're younger, if you have a down year, you don't make a lot, you can always make up for it because you have a lot of future work years, right? If you're retired, you have much less time left. And you don't have the ability to go out and, you know, get another job or something like that. You're on a fixed income. You know, no one wants to hire you anymore, so you can't make up for any lost money, and you can't be without money month to month, or else, you know, you're going to lose some weight. So, of course, you want as much money as possible, right? But you want to have consistency. You want to have reliability. Okay, so the retirement decision here is which restaurant, New York or LA, should you sell? Because you don't want to be flying back and forth in your retirement. You want to settle in one area, have one restaurant, that's going to be your income. Which one should you go for? So let's take a look. Just looking at the raw data, is it easy to tell what the answer is? What are you going to tell your client, just looking at the raw data? Why? Speak up.
Oh, the numbers in general are just higher than you?
Okay, so you're gonna get you know, it looks like you're gonna get more income from LA. Okay, what else are we looking at? We're looking at reliability too.
Like in the earlier years, they were doing better than the
Okay, that's true. So there could be a trend. In other words, it's increasing and decreasing. That could be an interesting point. You know, if there's a trend down or a trend up, you're going to want to know that. Okay? So it's not, you could kind of guess, get an impression. You only have 11 data points. Suppose we had 3,000 data points. Would you be able to look at that set of data and figure out what's going on? No. Okay, so what tools do we have to get an assessment of what's going on overall? So if I wanted to find out overall as a group, you as a group, what's your typical yearly income, what would I do? What can I do to find out about that? Average it. Okay, so I'd ask everyone and I would average it, okay? Now, let's suppose that works out to be, because a lot of you are working part-time, etc., about 15 grand a year. Reasonable, right? Let's suppose that's the average. Now, Bill Gates walks in. Okay, he makes 40 billion a year. Now, what's the average? What's the average?
higher.
It's much higher. So all of you are now making probably about $2 billion a year. Isn't that nice? Is that a good assessment or a good figure telling us about this group? No, it's distorted. So what other figure besides average will give you an overall sense of the tendency of that group? How the group seems to tend, or something about the group as a whole. Besides average, what else is there? No one remembers? Go. The mean is the average, but there's another one called the median. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Okay, how does the median work?
So he's like, what's in the middle, you plot out all
Right.
the data points. So like, if 15,000 was in the middle, that's what it would be.
Exactly. So if average for some reason is a problem, you still need a measure of central tendency, and so you're going to actually choose a median. You're going to line up from the lowest value to highest value, all the values, and choose one right in the middle. Okay? And that might be a better idea of what's going on with this group. Does anyone know, is there a measure, so we have average and median, those give us an idea of how much income we're getting from New York or Los Angeles. But that's not the only thing we want to know. We want to know which one is more reliable. So does anyone know, has anyone had stats before? What measure would you use to find out how scattered the data is, how inconsistent or consistent it is? Anybody? Mode? No? Maybe. There's something better though. You ever hear of variance? Standard deviation? No? You're going to get that, whether you like it or not. There's something called standard deviation, and that gives you a measure of the variance. Okay? So the higher the number, the less you like it. The more variance, that's bad. You want a low number. Make sense? Okay, so how can we evaluate this stuff? What we can do is come up with measures of central tendency. Now, the first one is going to be average. So how do I calculate average here? What would I do? You could use a formula. There's also a function. A formula would be something like you want to take take the sum of all this divided by maybe the count. And that'll give you an average. But there's actually something else you could do. What function would you use to get an average? Equals what? Average. It could be, the term could actually be mean, right? There's another term for that. Okay, so if average doesn't work out for you, just start typing in maybe mean, and maybe that'll show up. In this case it won't, but okay, you're like looking at that. It could be called mean. No, it's not. Let's try average. That does work. So I'm going to take equals average, highlight all the data, enter. I'm going to take that and copy it to the right. Okay. Now let's do the median. Equals median. Take the data. I'm going to click on it and then click this little box, lower right-hand corner. Click and drag to the right. Okay, just based on this, what's our decision? LA. Okay, but we haven't measured variance yet. And you're going to use something called standard deviation. You'll find out why later on in your stats course. But that is going to be equals STDEV dot P. So it's STDEV dot P. It should pop up you hit the tab key on top of it. It should just type it in for you. Okay, same thing. It's standard deviation, and we're going to highlight the data, press enter, copy it from left to right. Do we need all those decimal points? No, so let's get rid of them. Okay, given this, what's our decision? Why? I can't hear you.
Oh, because they're making the most money.
You want LA because they're making the most money? Okay. Anybody else?
LA has a really high standard deviation, so there's probably it's possible that a year you can make like nothing. And New York is more like.
Okay, so New York is far more stable. Now, what we could do is say, okay, the ratio between that and that is smaller than that and that, or we can calculate it. Let's calculate the exact difference. So what we want to see is, we want to tell the client, look, yes, you have an advantage with LA in terms of your overall average income, but you have more of a disadvantage there in terms of variance, and then vice versa. So how can you tell that? You want a precise figure. They're paying you to be an expert, so you got to show some expert skills here. So we're going to do equals, and then I'm going to take the difference between these two. That gives me the difference between the two averages divided by the sum of the two averages, and that gives me the percent difference. So given that, what's your decision? And how do you explain it to your client? So you have a 9% advantage in terms of income for LA. But you have a 29% advantage for New York in reduced variance. Right? Make sense? So, what you're going to tell them is, yeah, you're going to make more money with LA, but it's going to be, you're going into retirement. You don't want to, you can't sit out a few years where you're not making any money. New York is going to be a lot more consistent. Right? Make sense? Now, the other thing you could do to analyze this data is you can make a chart out of it. Does anyone know how to make a chart out of this data? Yep, go to insert, very good. Insert, tons of different types of charts. What chart do we want to see? What chart's going to help us, especially to look at variance? We could try a few charts and see if they make common sense. So we'll try this one. Is that easy to interpret? What other chart types are there? Let's do a line chart. Okay. Does that give you any idea? Let's say LA is blue. Does that give you an idea of which one is more reliable?
Yes.
Okay. So you can actually analyze data with graphs, or you can also communicate. In other words, figure out if something's going on, and then also, once you've decided, then you can make it easier to make your case by creating a simple chart that's nice and easy to read. Make sense?